Has Fire Emblem Engage been a failure? I know this is a controversial topic, and I'm sure there's going to be a fair share of angry comments on this video, so just this once, I want to ask my regular viewers for a favor. If you see someone dropping a comment along the lines of, "Oh my god, stop spreading lies, Engage hasn't fallen off, you stupid idiot," or something along those lines, just respond to their comment and say, "Please watch the whole video." Because this is not a video bashing Engage, nor is it a video where I'm going to talk about what a horrible game it was and list all the reasons it failed. That is not the reason I'm here today. I feel like that wouldn't bring anything new to the table. I would just be regurgitating stuff that people have been saying for months. In this video, I want to talk about what people mean when they say Engage has quote-unquote fallen off, because the answer isn't as straightforward as you might think. Or at least I think there's more of a nuance to this topic. In this video, I'm also going to be reading some comments from my viewers since I asked them to post their thoughts on my community tab a few days ago, and I got a lot of interesting takes that are worth bringing up. Finally, I'm going to offer some of my own opinions on why Engage might have fallen out of fashion with the community, and I'm going to try and put a bit more effort into my reasoning other than just saying, "Her game is bad and cringe, Ivy has barbecue lid on face." Or at the very least, I'm going to try. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about why Engage has, quote-unquote, been a failure. Now, before we dive into this video, I just want to mention a few things. By the time you guys see this video, I will be 30,000 feet up in the air on an airplane headed to the United States. I'm going to go visit my girlfriend and her family for 2 weeks, so that means this is the final video you'll see on this channel for a little while. I decided I could use a vacation, so I didn't prepare 15 videos in advance like I normally do. I've been too busy working on my own Fire Emblem game, Underon Saga, which comes out on August 3rd. You can check out the trailer for it in the top right corner of the screen. Now, me being on an airplane when this video drops is also one of the reasons I'm asking you guys for some help in the comment section by responding to the inevitable angry comments I know will show up from a bunch of people thinking this is another anti-Engage hate video, which it isn't. Now, I want to start off this video by asking one question. When people say Fire Emblem Engage has failed or fallen off, what does that mean? We know that in terms of sales, Engage matched Tree Houses in its opening weeks, though sales did drop somewhat after that. Still, according to Wikipedia, Engage has sold 1.6 million copies so far, and while that is not as insane a number as Tree House's 3.8 million copies, it's still not a bad number, and I think it's laughable that you can say any game is a failure when it sells over 1 million copies. Of course, sales alone does not decide whether a Fire Emblem game is good. Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn sold horribly when they first came out, and contributed to almost killing the series, but later they have garnered an almost cult-like following from the community, being revered as two of the best Fire Emblem games ever, and their main character, Ike, having an absolutely insane popularity in Japan. Now, when looking at Engage's 1.6 million copies sold, sure, it is less than Tree Houses, but Tree Houses was also a bit of an anomaly in terms of sales, and it might not be fair to compare other titles to it, even though a lot of people will do that anyway. But what's fascinating about Engage to me is that, as I said, in the opening weeks, its sales matched and even slightly exceeded that of Tree Houses, but then after a few weeks, they dropped dramatically, and this trend was also seen in the YouTube analytics. Now, since I do YouTube for a living, I always pay attention to online trends, meaning I monitor what games people are interested in and what people are searching for. With Tree Houses, the algorithm on YouTube was on fire for well over 3 months after the game launched, and the golden age of the game was almost 6 months. And I want to be clear that when I say a golden age, I mean a period in which making content about said game is almost guaranteed to bring in a lot of views and subscribers. During this period, people are actively looking for content of the game, they're searching for it, and channels who put out a lot of videos on the topic will grow rapidly. For Engage, this golden age did not last anywhere near as long. It was very hot for maybe 2 to 3 weeks, and then the algorithm just died. That doesn't mean it was impossible to get views on Engage content, but after this time, it just meant that the game was far less popular and people just weren't clicking or searching for it as much as they used to. Now, I know a lot of you guys are gonna bring up that I didn't continue my Fire Emblem Engage Iron Man. I decided to post a poll on my channel asking my audience whether or not they wanted to see the Engage Iron Man, or if they wanted me to go back and play one of the older games, in this case, Fire Emblem 7. And 73% of my audience voted included for Fire Emblem 7. That shows a lack of interest in Engage that was pretty hard for me as a content creator to overlook. I don't necessarily like pandering to the highest views. I feel like as a content creator, sometimes you should just do whatever you like, but you also have to listen to your audience. If they're not interested in a particular brand of content, you should change it. I know that some YouTubers almost have this romanticized attitude of views don't matter, just do what you like, but it's very easy to say that when you're getting the views. If your views would drop a lot, I think almost every single YouTube content creator would change their game plan. After all, a lot of us are doing this as our job, and no views means no income. We need to put food on the table and pay our rent as well. Anyway, the simple explanation for this rapid descent in popularity that a lot of people automatically like to jump to is Engage is cringe and bad, and that's why sales dropped. People bought it because Fire Emblem was popular and they liked tree houses, but once they played Engage, they hated it and the game died as a result. This way of arguing is kind of flawed to me because I think it's a lot more complex than that. I see a lot of people saying online that Engage's gameplay was fantastic, but that the story was bad. Not a lot of people will defend the writing or its characters, but a lot of people will defend the gameplay. I've even seen a lot of people saying that it is one of the most fun Fire Emblem games to date. Now, what other Fire Emblem games can we think about that fits this mold? Well, for me, Fire Emblem Fates spring to mind. Fates came out in 2015, and I remember this period very well because this was around the time when my channel blew up. And let me tell you something, Fire Emblem Fates was ridiculed by the community for its horrendous writing. Corrin was seen as one of the worst Avatar characters ever. People dunked on Fire Emblem Fates so hard, saying that it was not only one of the worst written Fire Emblem games to date, but one of the worst written games of all time. And while I think that's a bit harsh, I do agree that the writing of Fates left a lot to be desired. However, many, myself included, consider Fire Emblem Fates to be one of the best games in the series. To this day, I still believe that Conquest has the best map design and enemy placement ever. They put a lot of effort into this game. And even though the late game can turn into a bit of a skill fest, I still find every single playthrough I do of Conquest to be rewarding and fun. So here's the question I want to ask you guys. If the Fire Emblem community gives Fates a pass for having good gameplay but a bad story, why don't we extend that same courtesy to Engage? Maybe more time needs to pass before people forgive it for its clearly lacking story, or maybe there's something else about Engage that has made people lose interests. I want to tell a personal story of mine about how I got two of my friends into Fire Emblem. We've all had that friend or those friends who we really want to get into the franchise, and it's always a hard sell to get them invested. Usually the process involves showing them the game, telling them that they should try it, and that can be really tough because people generally are slow to try out new things. For me, I had two friends who had expressed interest in Fire Emblem, one male and one female, and I had tried to get them to play everything from Awakening to Fates to Echoes to Blazing Sword, and nothing seemed to pique their interests, until they saw Elise and Sakura. They absolutely loved them. They saw that CG with the two of them holding hands and dancing at the end of Revelation, and immediately their interest was sparked. They thought they were the cutest, most adorable girls they had ever seen, and they wanted to play the game they were from. When I showed them Fates, they bought it from the Nintendo eShop almost instantly and started playing. One of them played Birthright, another one played Conquests. And then they got mad because they realized they couldn't get both girls in the same playthrough. So on their own, they discovered that they could get Revelation, where they could field both Sakura and Elise and even support them together. So I indirectly made someone purchase Revelation, which makes me a little sad, but hey, at least they started playing Fire Emblem as a result. Later, both of my friends would go on to purchase Three Houses, and they also became big fans of Fire Emblem Heroes. Now, I've been thinking about this story a lot when I think about the appeal of Fire Emblem and how to bring in new players. Now, this is just one subjective story from one person, but I think that character design is incredibly important to pulling in new players to the game. But more than that is the game's aesthetics. I may be talking out of my butt here, but I think there is something very lacking about the way Engage looks and feels. It's not an ugly game by any means, it has occasionally breathtaking scenery, but there's just a little something missing from it. Each previous Fire Emblem game has had its own distinct charm. Blazing Sword looks nothing like Radiant Dawn, and Radiant Dawn looks nothing like Awakening, and Awakening looks nothing like Three Houses, but they all have a very unique glow to them that feels like Fire Emblem. And for me, Engage just lacks that glow. I don't know if it's the lack of shading in the cutscenes, the bright colors, or the somewhat sterile character expressions, but something about Engage doesn't feel like Fire Emblem to me. In fact, one of the major criticisms of Engage I saw when it dropped was that people said it looked like a Chinese bootleg Genshin Impact ripoff of Fire Emblem, and while I think this criticism is a little harsh, there's no denying that Engage's art direction is very different from previous installments. It looks more generic. Some people may like the art style, and that's fine, but what's evident to me is that it is a very polarizing aspect of the game. Previously, it seems that most of the Fire Emblem community have liked the art directions of the previous games, but with Engage, it felt more like a 50-50, and that has to have hurt the game in some way. And I do think that this is more than me just being jaded and elitist and viewing the older games through rose-tinted glasses. I genuinely think most of them are prettier than Engage. But anyway, enough about my own opinions. I want to read some comments now from my viewers taken from my community tabs, and I'd like to give my brief thoughts on them, because there were a lot of good takes here, and I'm going to be reading both positive and negative takes on Fire Emblem Engage. After that, I want to end this video off by offering an alternative reason why Engage may have flopped, and it probably isn't what you think it is, so stay tuned. Anyway, the first comment comes in from Yada Yada, and he says, "What I really like about Engage is the battle animations and how smooth the transitioning from map to combat is. The other recent Fire Emblem games have been really lacking in this department, and I couldn't agree more. The combat animations of Awakening were some of the weakest ever, I think, and even Fates continued this trend for a little bit. Echoes definitely did a little bit better, but Engage has definitely returned to having amazing animations. I still think very little competes with the aesthetics of the GBA games, but I think Engage is a close second." And then we have a comment from Vandal the Swift who says, "I'm really torn when it comes to Engage. I think the gameplay is some of the best in the series, and I really like the characters and their supports despite not liking a majority of their appearances. But all of that just falls apart for me in the main story. I just don't care about what's going on. I've been told it gets better as you go on, but I was only able to get about halfway through before I wasn't motivated to progress through anymore, from the story not going anywhere. Going around and collecting MacGuffins while meeting more royals and their retainers just felt so stilted. I get that Engage was supposed to be an anniversary game and not very serious, but I feel it leans too hard on the tropes it was trying to play tribute to without adding any substance of its own." And yeah, this is a very good point that Vandal makes here. Fire Emblem Engage kind of felt like it was just riding the coattails of previous games with how it constantly brought up emblems from previous lords. It didn't really feel as a tribute as much as it felt like it was just using them to elevate itself. Now, I don't know if there's anyone watching pro wrestling here, but I'm a bit of a fan, and I would like to make a bit of a comparison between how Fire Emblem Engage uses their emblem rings compared to how some wrestling companies, especially WWE, use old wrestlers to promote their current product. In wrestling, it's not uncommon for older retired wrestlers to show up as guest stars every now and then. And that's always a cool event because, you know, these people are legends from the past. They had really cool careers back in the day. Many people still know who they are, but they are old, they're not in their prime, they obviously can't really wrestle anymore, so their appearances are more of a novelty than anything else. However, at some points, it feels like particularly WWE uses their legends too much. There was a criticism at some point that almost every other week there was some kind of legend showing up, and many people saw this as WWE not having faith in their current wrestlers. The fact that they constantly felt the need to bring back these old wrestlers to try and promote their content showed that they had failed to push new stars. And I feel like this also applies to Fire Emblem Engage. In many ways, yes, it is paying tribute to previous games, but it also kind of feels like Engage is saying, hey, I'm not really that important on my own, but hey, look at Roy and Lynn and Hector and all those lords you like. They're in here, come and play me, ha ha ha. And it just kind of gives off a feeling of weakness. Maybe not everyone views it that way, but it sure feels that way to me at times. Here's another comment from Nathan5533, and he says, I think something overlooked about Engage is the actual character writing. The story itself is rightfully criticized, but I found so many characters I loved based on the quality of their supports, like Linden, Saphir, Elir, Selkov, Ivy, Hortensia, and Sadal, to name a few. It's a shame that not a lot of characters get to show off their personalities in the story, or come across as very tropey, because there's some genuinely good stuff here. And yeah, this is something that I've said for years. Supports can be great, but they don't carry a character. If a character doesn't stand out in the main story, then supports aren't necessarily going to relieve them. Sometimes people will go out of their way to read their supports, but I will say, I like that these characters have good supports, and I wish that I spent more time reading them, but to me, a character has to make an impression on me in the main story for me to care about them, although there certainly are some gems hidden away in supports, and it is nice that people are bringing some attention to that. Then we have a comment from my good friend Ephraim 225 who says, I'm going to cheat and answer both perspectives, though these are both genuine opinions. The best thing about Engage is the character building system of equipping rings and gaining skills or other powers from them. It's in-depth, worth experimenting with, and allows the kind of character building freedom treehouses offered while not being completely unrestricted. And the nostalgia is put to good use when it comes to what ring has what ability. It's a good point from Ephraim. I agree with him here. There is a lot of fun in building your characters. It's addictive even, and definitely a strong point about Engage. They managed to pull off the customization of the monastery without doing the monastery, which I approve of. Then he continues, what's stopping it from being the best Fire Emblem of all time is without a doubt the writing and character design. Fashion disasters left and right, horrible writing and gratuitous avatar worship, predictable plot points. I don't think I liked anyone in the cast particularly well. In my view, it's really hard to find something likable here. And yeah, I mean, sure, I agree with a lot of what Ephraim is saying here. The fashion choices of some of these character designs is just really weird. I mean, you have characters that look really pretty, there's just something about them that really makes them awkward to me. You look at Celine, did they really have to give her that ballroom dress? I understand they're trying to make her stand out. On a fun side note, my girlfriend actually redesigned Celine. She drew a sketch of her, how she wanted her to look. And she came up with this sketch, which I thought was pretty good. And then another one of my friends, Clockinator, he ran that through AI to create an AI sketch of it. And I actually thought it came out really amazing. Now, I know a lot of you guys don't like AI art, but just hear me out here. I think that this design is really amazing, and I think something like this would have been way better for Celine. And my problem with a lot of the Engage characters is just that their designs, they're mostly good, but then they have some weird quirks to them that is really weird. Like Yunaka, I like her design, a bit much cleavage, but hey, I'm a guy, I'm not going to complain about that. But the stars in her hair just makes her look weird. Goldmary, one of the legit best female designs in Engage for me, and yet there's something weird about her. I can't put my finger on it, but it's just like, it's something strange about her that doesn't look right. And this goes for so many of the Engage characters. They would be amazing if they just hadn't added so many accessories onto them. Like, why does Tamara have Christmas ornaments in her hair? She didn't need that. I think she would have looked better without them. Then we have a comment from Oof, and he says, as someone who really likes Engage, 5th place out of 19 Fire Emblem games, the gameplay is just great and really replayable, same as the OST, just an all-around great Fire Emblem, despite some bad actors wanting to claim that it was a failure. Really, my only issue is no other paths like in Fates and the UI being clunky, also the fell Xenologue. Also, despite it being an unofficial thing, modding turns Engage from an 8 out of 10 to a 9.5 out of 10. It basically fixes any issues that Engage has. It's insane how there's an improvement mod or a new feature mod for everything. Definitely will age better once more people emulate Switch. Yeah, Oof makes some really good points here, and you can see he really likes Engage. And yeah, I really hate the UI. The UI of Engage is something that has been driving me absolutely nuts. The fact that I have to spend 20 minutes giving tonics to all my units, it absolutely drives me up a wall. And the Fell Xenologue, I watched a couple of streams of that, and I decided I wanted nothing to do with it. It is probably one of the worst DLC they've ever released. Then we have a comment from Ileana who says, for myself, I didn't really get attached to any of the characters and the story left a lot to be desired. It's a simple comment, but I think it's how a lot of people are feeling about the game. And then I want to read this comment from Hanako who says, designs are a big appeal to me, and Engage's cast really didn't connect with me at all. While there are some gorgeous designs like Jade and Goldmary, which fit in a Fire Emblem medieval setting, the majority felt like VTuber/Halloween City. A lot of comparisons people make is that Engage is like Fates. However, Fates' character design, with the exception of a few like Corrin, are incredibly faithful to the medieval setting. In both Europe and Imperialist Japan, even the generics look gorgeous and captivating. TLDR, the character design sucks. And yeah, I agree. There are some great ones in Engage. Goldmary, as I said, is one of my favorites. But man, they failed a lot of the other designs. So let's conclude the video and finish off with a theory of mine. I don't think it's fair to call Engage a failure when it has sold over 1 million games. The numbers don't lie, and a lot of people bought and played the game, even if it wasn't as many as with Three Houses. Still, if Engage had a negative impact on the franchise, I think we'll see it during the next release, whether it be the long-awaited genealogy of the Holy War remake, another spin-off, or something else entirely. But before I leave you, I want to offer a different theory on why Engage came and went like a flash in the pan, and that is something a little bit more depressing. It could be that Fire Emblem Engage coming in with a bang and leaving just as quick is a symptom of something deeper among Fire Emblem fans, and maybe gaming as a whole. Maybe with more and more video games coming out all the time, the competition is simply higher than it used to be. When I grew up, the reason I played Fire Emblem 6 and 7 15 times over the course of 2 summer vacations wasn't just the fact that I liked them, but also the fact that I didn't have that many other games to play. Today, kids and teenagers have access to more and many different kinds of consoles, and maybe in 2023, our capacity to care about any single one game isn't as great as it used to be. Studies have shown that with the rise of short content like TikTok and YouTube Shorts being more prevalent, that most people's attention spans have shortened, and maybe this also translates into the gaming scene. It's just a hypothesis, I don't have any evidence to back up my claim, but it could be that a new Fire Emblem game coming, blowing up and going away in the span of just a month, is the new normal, not an outlier. I hope this isn't the case. I want the reason Engage quote-unquote flopped, at least in terms of the algorithm, to be due to the many reasons we've outlined in this video, because that is something that can be fixed. There is also another simple explanation for why Engage simply didn't do as well as its predecessor, and that's the fact that the Switch as a console is starting to show its age. Historically speaking, Fire Emblem games released at the start of a console's lifespan have performed much better than those released at the end of it. Maybe we'll get the announcement of a new console and a new Fire Emblem title along with it, and we'll see if this trend reverses. Or maybe it won't. Time will tell. So in conclusion, I don't think Engage has been a failure when it has literally sold 1.6 million copies. I think it is a Fire Emblem game that has a lot of visible flaws, and it has a very polarizing effect on the community. But I don't think it's correct to say that it is a failed Fire Emblem game. At least not on the same level as some previous installments like Shadow Dragon and Heroes in Light and Shadow, which almost brought the franchise down entirely. Anyway, I'd love to hear your comments about this below, and if you enjoyed this video, please smash a like and hit the subscribe button. My name is Mengs, and I'll see you guys again in 2 weeks. Bye bye!